I almost pulled out and endangered myself in traffic because I simply couldn't hear the approaching vehicle. And that's a little terrifying, especially if you're merging onto an interstate, 70-mile-an-hour traffic. My name is Dan. I'm a former employee of Illinois State University, retired for actually 19 years now. I worked in building service, the maintenance of the buildings. In fact, I did that for 26 years. We operate a lot of equipment, machines that would polish floors. Sometimes we used hand tools like drills, that sort of thing. A wide variety of tasks that required equipment that made noise, simply. I have an interest in cars, restoration, hot rods, that kind of thing. Never wore hearing protection, and I should have, because we're building engines and literally building vehicles from the ground up. We'd start with the frames, place the engine, transmission in place. It has no exhaust. And so when you tune those in preparation, the building process, they're loud, very loud. I was in the United States Army. In fact, I volunteered for the draft when I was a teenager. I was 19 at the time. And my job was communication. So when I was sent overseas, we would direct what we call field fire. Our task was fire direction and control. So I was in an environment of cannons going off either by Army tanks, armored equipment, or what we called field tubes, 155, 105 howitzers, for example. And we had no hearing protection. And I realized that damaged my hearing. All that occurred to me, I learned about that later, rather than at the time. I never really gave it a lot of thought. I didn't have to because I was never challenged for my hearing, but it progressively got worse. I've had a few jobs since then because I just wanted to stay active. My wife was a special ed teacher. She retired, or I retired before she did. So for that reason, I picked up a part-time job with one of the corporate car parts companies here in town. It was an exciting job because I was learning the computer. I already knew basically the mechanics. I would have to extract parts from the inventory and then deliver it to the commercial accounts that we had. So it was critical that I understood what I was looking for by the numbers, by part numbers, and I was having a lot of difficulty with that. Not because I didn't know the parts, it was because I wasn't hearing the number properly. And it was at that time that I realized in that process that I needed hearing aids. The reason I say that is because my boss at the time would give me instructions of parts to pick up. I'd make mistakes. He knew that I knew the parts. He took me out to the side. He'd take me under his wing to show me. I'm older, obviously, than most of the employees there. And he said, have you ever considered the fact you might be in the early stages of dementia? Which kind of shocked me. I said, why do you say that? Because you're not, and just not communicating very well. I was tested for dementia and determined that that wasn't really an issue for me at that time. And fortunately still isn't. It was misinterpreted. If the guy can't hear me and understand me, maybe there's a little challenge going on there, a psychological challenge of some kind. I retired I was 60 when I retired, and I noticed that I was lacking communicative skills, which is unusual for me. That's never been a real issue or challenge. I wasn't hearing the conversations I was engaged in. It became obvious to me. I asked someone to repeat something. What really stands out to me is I didn't realize I was talking softly because I didn't realize what my volume and or lack of volume really was. I had no way to adequately assess that. And so there were times when, could you please speak up or whatever. And ironically, I've done a lot of public speaking. I volunteered for a lot of veterans groups and at time would address the public, aid for veterans and benefit programs and that sort of thing. And if I didn't have a microphone, I had a real challenge because I'm just not used to talking really loud or projecting my voice, and I was not aware of my lack of hearing at the time, lack of the quality of that hearing. When you can't hear very well, sometimes you misconstrue what you're hearing. in the process of conversations. Why is he muttering? Why doesn't she talk louder? Well, they're talking at a normal range. I can't hear the normal range, and that's why it became a challenge. It became very frustrating. And I'll admit that initially I didn't want to wear hearing aids because I didn't want to look like I was inadequate in any way. I realized looking back, that's just a matter of vanity, and a lot of men have that vanity. And then the older you get, the older group we're talking about, the more prevalent that is. And I've had friends I've literally come to the verge of lecturing them about their hearing. It doesn't matter what you look like or what anyone thinks. You have to take care of yourself with this. Another adverse effect of substandard hearing is a sense of balance. You can lose your balance. And reflecting back over my experience without hearing aids, I realized that was part of the problem. My wife, she says, you're often asking me to repeat myself. And she says, maybe it's your hearing. Why don't you go get a hearing test? So I went to Bloomington-Normal Audiology. And guess what? I'm a candidate. I didn't know what to expect. And I was somewhat apprehensive. I'm not a person who's prone to anxiety, but I was a little nervous about it. What am I getting myself into? What's this going to cost? It's a medical thing. Very professional staff. When I made my first appointment, how I was initially greeted, just the whole thing impressed me. It was very informative. In a word, I think it's probably the best way to describe it. And the seriousness of the whole thing. I mean, the people were friendly and, very personable, but there was a lot of information that they shared with me. I left there with a lot more information than I had, prior to the appointment for sure. I was struck by that. I took the first test. I was amazed at what I couldn't hear. Just different levels and pitches of sound. I simply could not hear them. And the lower range, there's the upper range and that sort of thing. And I had no idea that there were so many different sound ranges. I've just simply never been oriented or exposed to that. There's a common misperception about hearing aids, and it's rather simple. It's not about volume. It's not hearing louder or hearing things at a lower decibel level. It's deciphering the sound. And the units like I have on right now, the hearing aids I'm wearing today, very specifically separate sounds. And it makes it's almost indescribable, the difference. One of the concerns I had initially going into my first pair was, if I lose this hearing, does that mean I'm only going to get part of it back? I mean, I had no idea what percentage of hearing I could, regain. But it's just not an issue today. My hearing is really quite normal. When I initially experienced my first pair of hearing aids, it was like someone turned the lights on. And it really was a remarkable experience. I could suddenly hear in a way that I hadn't heard in years. Just ranges of tone, the whole bit. I love music. I love to listen to music. I have a very varied taste in music, everything from jazz, blues to pop music, and it just really enhanced that experience. And to be honest, I was kind of excited about it. I'm going to hear. It's just going to be a whole different deal. When you have that first pair of hearing aids, everything changes. It changes dramatically. It's just amazing what you can hear. You can hear the background in, for example, I watch a music video. I can decipher individual instruments. You hear the bass, you hear the drums, the lead guitar, the rhythm guitar, very distinctly. Where I couldn't hear that before, it's all kind of just a meld, if you will, of sound. The first challenge I had in my first pair of hearing aids were disassembling them to replace what they call the basket that inserts into the ear canal. It's a little tricky when you're not used to it. Of course, it's a new experience. It was very foreign to me at that time. But the staff there at Bloomington-Normal Audiology went to great lengths to explain that process to me, to walk me through it step by step, so that I would be familiar with it. And it's a new experience. I've never done that before. The common denominator in my experience receiving an improved replacement pairs of hearing aids was the clarity of the sound. It was a constant improvement. It just amazes me what remarkable technology is involved. And the average person walking down the street probably has no idea what that's all. I'm sure have no idea what that's all about. But you don't know what you've got until you lose it, and it's a wonderful experience to gain it back. And in hearing, that's been my experience. I lost it and I gained it back. I like to describe myself as a rather social person. So I have coffee groups, different kinds of interests, and various groups of people I've been engaged with socially. And what surprised me, they didn't notice that I had hearing aids right away. And I thought these things are going to be like, speakers sticking out of the side of my head or something, but they're not conspicuous. And like in my case, flesh tone, that they matched my complexion, so you couldn't see it all that well. And that surprised me. And then those who raise their voice, do I need to talk louder? No, you're fine. You're fine. I have clarity here in the volume, so you don't need to do that. Well, it's a simple proposition, really. Do I want to hear or not? I don't care anymore. I mean, if these things are glaringly conspicuous, I still wouldn't care, because you can't function properly without proper hearing. Another point, driving. If you're hearing impaired, you're not as alert as you need to be. And I remember there were a couple instances prior to that first pair of hearing aids that I received. I almost pulled out and endangered myself in traffic because I simply couldn't hear the approaching vehicle. And that's a little terrifying, especially if you're merging onto an interstate, 70-mile-an-hour traffic. I have a battery-operated lawnmower and blower and trimmer and everything else, but I can tune this to my downloaded songs I have in my cell phone and listen to it while I'm mowing, and I hear it with clarity. The volume's up. A battery-powered mower is obviously a lot less noisy than a gasoline motor one. That's one of the things I like to do. I also just like to listen to music when I'm doing something else. I'm maybe everything from washing dishes to washing my car or whatever, and I can hear that. Something else that impresses me is the range this has, because I can do the same thing with my laptop, put music on that, and I have done that. It just opens up a whole new world of capabilities, possibilities that I never had before. Phone calls have a clarity that they never had before. I simply can't imagine not being able to hear at all. This experience has given me a glimpse of what that might be like. I remember attending a concert. In fact, it was at ISU, at the Bone Student Center, and we were sitting rather far back. We miscalculated our position when we bought the tickets for the seats, but I could still hear adequately. And I know that just from my own experience, had I not had the hearing aids at that time, I wouldn't be able to say that. I probably wouldn't have been able to hear very well at all. The charger is rather compact. I can put everything I need for that, including the kit to clean and change out the components of my hearing aid. I always take them with me. They're all small, they're easy to carry, they're easy to use, they're very practical. That to me is one of the biggest assets of having hearing aids. I've got everything I need. I know exactly what I need to do. And if there's ever any question about it, as has been the experience all along, I have a very professional staff I can contact at any time, Bloomington-Normal Audiology, who can help me. I love nature, the wind, the sounds of nature, chirping birds, things that, again, I couldn't hear before, at least not with clarity. Some of those sounds I didn't hear at all. My wife and I like to go to the Carbondale area twice a year. We rent a cabin there, and it's just amazing how many different sounds there are and how enjoyable that can be. One of the experiences that comes to mind is fireworks, 4th of July. I could see more than I could hear prior to having hearing aids, and that's an entirely different experience as well. Or watching an air show, another good example of that. Hearing aids at your disposal just opens up a lot of new worlds, in my opinion. It's an amazing experience. The experience I have in hearing now are so profoundly better than they've ever been before. I do wish I had investigated this before. But there's another factor to that. I had to have that brought to my attention because, like I said, it's a subtle, very slow process. The person that needs a hearing aid is usually the last one to know. It's always blatantly obvious to everyone else around them. And this guy's not hearing, he's not listening, not paying attention to me. That's not the case. You simply can't do what you're not aware of. When I was asked if I thought perhaps I should have my hearing checked, I felt like I was being badgered. What I didn't realize is that that's not suggested unless someone has some concern about your welfare. But I didn't look at it that way at the time. It would have been easy to say, why don't you just mind your own business? My hearing's not that bad. What does that even mean, not that bad? I mean, we're not striving for levels of hearing. It's hearing, and it's either properly functioning or it's not. To some degree, it's not. My suggestion, advice, if you will, is if there's some doubt about your hearing, you have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain to have your hearing checked. It's not an astronomically expensive venture. Highly advise you to check that out. And it's for your own benefit. I don't know, I feel kind of spoiled now. I've had these for so long. It's just I'm not missing out on anything. And it's a giant plus. A suggestion I would make to anyone who's questioning the quality of hearing, if you know someone wears hearing aids, I would encourage them to ask them about it, ask them about their experience. I doubt very seriously that they'll be reluctant to explain that. Everybody I know that has hearing aids is more than happy to share the information that I'm sharing today because it benefits others. And I can't emphasize the importance of that enough. Hearing loss is gradual, it's progressive, and it's subtle. No one loses their hearing overnight. It's a long process usually. At least that was certainly my experience. The difference is almost indescribable. It's been a very positive experience. To regain my hearing, to have adequate hearing, to achieve that again. I can't imagine not having it. It's frustrating to suggest to someone it's obvious to me they're in need of some hearing device, some assistance in some way. And the irony of the whole thing is such a simple process. It's only complicated to the person who's operating the equipment that assesses the need. It's not for the person who's receiving them. That's the easy part. You sit there and they adjust your hearing because they have the technology to do it. That's another good point too, I think, is the equipment that's used in this process is state-of-the-art and it's constantly being improved. This pair of hearing aids I had compared to the ones I had the first one is like the difference in riding a horse or driving a Cadillac. It's just phenomenal. I mean, it really is a phenomenal difference. When I put these in the morning, it's amazing how everything just kind of goes into sync. My hearing is as good as it can get.